I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan. Before we go any further, I stand corrected. I'm sorry. I reported that it was somebody else who wrote Rod Stewart's Forever
It was
Young.
Bob Dylan, just as I claimed.
Yes.
But I had heard it was Keith as well.
Anybody, but
Right.
I knew that one of our guests would come back and put me feet to the flame, so I needed to clarify that. I am sorry.
Anyways,
As a lawyer,
no, I don't accept it. You're infallible. I refuse to accept the objective facts.
I agree.
Well, you all are too kind, but like I said, Steve Fishman is my conscience.
As soon as he said it, I'm listening to Dylan sing it in my mind, and I'm saying Bob Dylan didn't sing other people's songs, you know?
Exactly.
Well, you knew when he said, "Are you sure?" and he's a lawyer. You knew what that meant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad he fessed up, but anyway. You know.
And I've never been cross-examined on the show by Steve Fishman. Said no one ever. Anyways, we've got a great show today. We've got a lot to talk about, and we do have attorney Steve Fishman. We have attorney Joel Sklar. We have president of BME Consulting and former director of Wayne County Public Services Department, Beverly Watts, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. We have literally, or shall I say, Steve Fishman has waited 2 years for this show. A patient man he is, and props to him for having predicted this day coming. Well, not the show, but this week and the events leading up to the show, as saying that this would perhaps be the most consequential in former President Donald Trump's legal woes. And that, of course, is the indictment in the state of Georgia. Of course, misery loves company, and Trump has been indicted with 18 other people in the election interference case in what is a state court matter, not a federal court matter, distinguishing it from the other legal woes that he has. For those of you who are keeping track, and who knows, maybe this might help you in the Powerball or Mega Millions, pick a number. We are up to 91 different felony counts that former President Trump is facing. It seems, as what Steve has been saying all along, this one might be the one that is most dangerous to him and his legal and perhaps political future. So take it away, Steve.
Well, it's most dangerous to him for a number of reasons. The first one is that it's a state court case. There are some ways to get a state court case removed to federal court if it's in the performance of a person's duties, but there's no way that any judge is going to accept that the stuff that he did was somehow in the performance of his duties as president. The second reason that it's important that's in state court is that you can't pardon yourself or anybody else for a state court offense. The president only has the authority to pardon for federal offenses. And the third reason, of course, is if it stays right there in Fulton County, I think is the county of Atlanta, you're going to have a pretty decent jury pool, kind of similar to what Smith's going to get with the DC case. And I think the noose is absolutely tightening. The one thing I got to tell you guys, though, because I've read a couple of things that were attributed to Ms. Willis, saying, for instance, they're going to try them all at once. That's not going to happen. I can tell you that. I've had cases. Insane. The most defendants I've ever been involved in one trial was 8 defendants in front of Judge Cohn. There wasn't any room, and that's a federal courtroom. I've been in Fulton County. I tried a homicide case there many years ago. There ain't no room for 18 people, let alone 18 defendants and their lawyers. Right. So I think what's going to happen is we're going to find out pretty quickly what Mr. Giuliani plans to do, because he would be a key witness, obviously. The fact that he was an unindicted co-conspirator in the federal case led me to think that he might have already been cooperating. By the same token, some of his statements since the Georgia indictment are so ridiculous if he's in fact cooperating, because he's shitting on the case, saying this isn't a real case, blah, 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 blah. That's going to look funny trying to explain that if he's going to testify for the government. So I think it's a locked case. I think it's an easy case to try against Trump. As I've said all along for 2 years, the Raffensperger phone call, there's really no way to explain that, particularly when you have Raffensperger and Gabriel Sterling, solid Republicans who actually voted for the asshole twice, testifying against him. And explaining to us, keep in mind, I've said this all along, one of the things that the prosecutor who tries that case is going to say, so Mr. Raffensperger, why did you tape it? And I can tell you what the answer is, because you can't trust the son of a bitch to ever tell the truth. So you got to get his own voice on tape. And there's nothing worse, as I know from all the wiretaps evidence I've had introduced in cases of mine, nothing worse than the sound of your own client's voice committing a crime. It's just a very difficult thing to get around.
So here you've got DA Fani Willis bringing charges under the Georgia RICO statute. How does that play out? I mean, obviously there's differences with the federal statute, of which Giuliani is quite familiar, because he used it himself to prosecute many cases in New York when he was the DA up there. The fact that she chose to go ahead and use this particular statute, what makes that so critical here?
Well, first thing, I don't know the exact specifics of the RICO statute in Georgia. My case was a murder case down there, so I didn't have to worry about that. It was just regular old murder. The advantage is that it puts a lot more pressure, in my opinion, on not just Trump, but on the other people involved in the case. Conspiracy charges allow a lot of hearsay. RICO for sure allows a lot of hearsay, and RICO carries big time punishment. I mean, that's the thing. You know, Trump at his age and in his physical condition, I mean, he's not getting, if he gets 20 years, he ain't living that long anyway. But other people got to sit there and decide, do I really want to, put myself in that kind of a position? And she uses the RICO statute, I think, to scare the defendants. I think that's the real reason for it. And the interesting thing, just so everybody knows, a lot of times people say, oh, these prosecutors, that's supposed to be used to prosecute organized crime families. And you know what I say in this case? They're right. And that's exactly what it is. This is an organized crime family, and he's the Don. And anybody who recognizes that has not been paying attention.
Is there a minimum mandatory on a RICO charge down there?
Not that I know of, but I don't really think that sentencing is the least of the consequences as far as I'm concerned. I don't know that anybody's going to send an old fat man to prison. I don't know if they will, especially when the Secret Service has to sit in there with him. The issue is to convict his ass. That's what it's all about.
So Beverly, the optics of this case, I think, are boding really interesting. First of all, it looks like next week Trump is going to be processed in Atlanta. And the sheriff in Fulton County had said, well, he's going to be treated like anybody else, meaning he's going to be fingerprinted. They're going to take a mugshot. And also, along with that, this is a state case. And most likely, it seems as though it will be televised. So how do you think the optics are going to play out? And how much popcorn should we buy in advance we're going to need for this trial?
I think the optics will play out, Brander, especially in the world of TikTok, and especially if they're going to have the cameras in the court. But overall, just listening to Steve, and you're a brilliant attorney, and most of the attorneys are keyed into all the legalese of this case and all of his indictments. But just speaking from just the average citizen who moves real fast and listen to the sound bites, initially when the first indictment came out, everybody was like, okay, especially if you were, already thinking that he was guilty of something and some should happening to him. And then we go down now with the fourth one. So now even people I speak to who do not like Trump and do not want to see him as president, they're getting kind of, empathy towards him, because they're thinking this is just piling on. I wonder if the DOJ's office probably should have gotten together and maybe prioritize these indictments, like if Georgia is the one that can finally get him, because what you're finding now is, he's making more money. You know, he has gaining a little bit more support, and no one actually believes he's really going to go to jail. To Steve's point, it's just getting him indicted. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a show for popcorn, TikTok, and he's going to be the star there, and he's going to be Donald Trump, and he's going to have fun at the circus.
I think, you know what, it's a little bit disconcerting if, let's say, he's up on 91 charges around the country and he doesn't do, I mean, he's got to do some kind of time, whether it's home detention or something, but he's got to, you can't, it just makes a little bit of a, and you guys may disagree, a little bit of a mockery to not do any time for a RICO conviction. I think it is a 5-year minimum. I think the range is 5 to 20 years for RICO in Georgia. And I don't know how you get around that if there's a mandatory minimum, if there's a way to get around it.
Does anyone know if Unabomber's cabin is still available up in Montana?
What happens if he goes to trial and is acquitted? What is the flip side of that? You know, we're expecting guilt. I'm expecting guilt. But what's if he's acquitted? Is that going to give him extra momentum in the election? Is it going to be, look, this is all another hoax? You know, there's a danger on both sides. I would love to see a conviction, but convictions aren't guaranteed.
Right, exactly.
It's my concern is, my God, what if he wins this thing?
An acquittal is dangerous. I think it really emboldens him to the narrative that he's pushing forward. So, I think it's interesting that he canceled his Monday press conference because his attorney, he's saying our attorneys are going to basically present all that evidence in filings and in court and stuff like that. I think that press conference would have only illustrated more how delusional he is and how he still cannot accept, and would only, I think, embolden the prosecutor's narrative.
You're assuming even as a report, this is Trump. God knows what he's really got or what he really has.
He had nothing.
This is,
nothing.
He's a star. This is just rhetoric.
It's like Michael Bell. I got so much evidence about the electoral, but I can't give it to you. I can't show it to you.
It's the bluff.
It's a bluff, and it's a distraction, and it was never sincere. He's never. Yeah. So
but Steve just brought up a good point that I never thought of. Is like, what if he is convicted and has to serve time? Secret Service is going to be in there. I mean, this is just a mockery.
Well, a couple of things. I think that the only indictment of the 4 that we could have done without was the New York State Court case. And I think it was not a good idea for Bragg to be the first one going. In answer to your thing, Beverly, about if there's people out there that think that he's being piled on, he's not being piled on any more than a guy who sticks up a gas station in Detroit and he goes and shoots a teller at a bank in Oshkosh. He's not being piled on. Those 3 separate cases, the Georgia case, the documents case in Florida, and then the DC case, those are solid, regular cases that charge real crimes that were committed by him and others on all 3 of those occasions. The New York case, if I were Bragg, I'd volunteer that we're going to put that to the end and let's see what happens in the rest of these, because that case is nothing compared to what we're talking about.
Yeah, you're right, and I totally agree. The only difference with that is the person is robbing a gas station. They're not running for president, and we are in jeopardy of possibly having someone like this who can still go ahead and continue through the election and possibly has a chance to get reelected. That's the major difference.
Wait, let me ask this question. I read something. I don't know if it was Sarah Longwell, the former Republican pollster, but now she works with the Bulwark and this and that and the other. I read some stuff. I don't remember if it was her, but there have been a lot of polling done. There's been a lot of polling done, and it's surprising to me. It really kind of showed that 30% of his support, that's going to be there. But as more of these things are coming out, it sounded to me from reading what I read in, I think it was in the Times, that a lot of these Republicans, they've had enough of his crap. I really don't think there's a significant chance that he can win in an election. Now, maybe if Hunter Biden turns out to have murdered, I don't know, Khrushchev, then maybe that's going to change something. I don't know.
Well, also Biden, his deterioration, is going to be significant too. I mean, Biden looks like the old man that he is. He walks like the old man that he is. He talks like the old man that he is. That's not. My son's 27. Biden doesn't excite me. It doesn't excite him. Biden doesn't excite me. I wish there wasn't an alternative to Biden, somebody younger, more vigorous, who we could get behind. But
You
apparently,
mean like RFK Jr.?
like he seems like a reasonable guy. But truly, that there would be some other Democrat that could emerge from this, perhaps a governor from somewhere, because Biden, I'm not confident in Biden, and I'm a stalwart, and I'm a little bit scared about that.
I think this election is going to be just like before. I think if it comes down to Biden again and then Trump, I think, and I do ultimately, I just believe it now, if it's Trump, that Biden ultimately, will be the victor. But I think it won't be because everybody wants Biden, to your point, because everyone is concerned about the age, but it's going to be no one wants Trump.
Correct. I agree. That I think is true. I think you're absolutely right.
And I think the backups there, I mean, we're not really seeing Ron DeSantis, I think, is flaming out. He's a very unlikable candidate. He's gone with the slavery issue.
He's more scarier than Trump, believe it or not.
Right. He has the equal evilness. He's less likable than Trump. At least Trump has.
Apparently his debate memo was leaked, and it said in big letters, "Show emotion." Somebody actually has to cue him to do that. Yeah. Beverly, you brought up an interesting point. You said that you're encountering people who now are starting to feel that maybe there's a pylon on Trump, and even those who might have been either sitting on the fence or a little bit frosty toward Trump are starting to show empathy. What about the idea then that there could be a domino effect when it comes to state cases? Michigan, when it comes to election interference, Georgia. Now there's talk about an Arizona investigation, Pennsylvania. So it looks like this could become something where we see not just a bunch of minions and cultists on the ground, but a coordination from the big kahuna himself in these states. Is that just going to be then seen as past the tipping point? And should that be enough of a reason to discourage investigations and perhaps prosecutions?
Yeah, no, I don't believe it should discourage them, because the law is the law and no one is above the law. I wholeheartedly believe that. I think what it comes down to is the reality of having empathy and sympathy for Trump, even if you don't like him, is totally different than voting for him to be the president. So I think the danger would be as you're going through these states, and if people perceive to be, having it piled on, and they only listen to sound bites. Remember, they're not the legalese looking at all details. And if they're sitting in that jury box, then they might have that empathy to say, okay, piling on, and maybe he will not be convicted of some of these charges. I think that's the danger. But I still think that it won't pivot for him to get votes to become president. I truly believe that incident on January 6th really did it for him, even with some of the strongest supporters that he had. That right there was the tipping straw. But I think it can have him walk away with some of these charges in the minds of some of the jurors. But I don't think that would translate to votes.
So one of the bees I've got in my bonnet is regarding this contrast that people are making between the Georgia case and the other cases. As Steve said rightly, he can't. There is no pardon power, even if he became president in the Georgia case, because it's a state case. But there seems to be a kind of assumption, or maybe a presumption, that he can pardon himself if he were to be elected, and I don't think that's true. I mean, it's just that it's uncharted territory. Right. So Joel, is that right?
Yeah, no, I don't dispute that. No president has been in that position, other than maybe Nixon, I would think. But no, to pardon yourself, I think, is completely unconstitutional. I don't think that the Constitution wasn't to create a kingship. It was above the law. It was an opposition to a kingship that was above the law. So I don't think that it does provide it, but it's been untested. God knows what the Supreme Court would do with it. If that's a terrifying thought, that a president can commit countless crimes brazenly out in public, and that's what he's done, and be able to get reelected for the purpose of pardoning himself, get reelected, and then pardon himself and wreak more havoc down the road. I can't see the any intellectual honesty with allowing him to do so.
I look at 9 people on the Supreme Court who seem to have immunized themselves from any kind of ethical oversight. I think that's what makes it kind of scary, that they could then make a rationalization that the president himself could have that kind of immunity as well. Allan.
I was going to say, I think, and maybe you guys disagree, I think the strongest case is the document case. I think there's just so much evidence obstruction, that it's even more clear cut. There's no wiggle room whatsoever on that, and I think that's the strongest. But that being said, the DC case and the Atlanta case really go to the heart of what this guy has done. And the other thing about piling up is that, you know what, if you and I have kind of shady people and we have shady dealings all the time, we're not running for president. We're not putting ourselves under the microscope. And that's what you do when you run for president. And that's what you do when you put yourself in the White House, particularly even more magnified. And if you're a dishonest guy, as he is, it's going to catch up to you, and it's going to be like shooting fish in a barrel. There's going to be a million cases that you could develop.
Yeah, because Trump commits his crimes in public. You
Yeah.
know, and the number of crimes you commit doesn't forgive the previous crimes you've already committed. That's, you know, which is an absurdity.
Well, it's like when he got sued by the woman in New York over the sexual assault stuff. Yeah. He thought, okay, I've lost that case. Now I can go out and basically commit the same violations again and trash her again. He doesn't get it. He just is. He's like a kid. He's a junior high kid.
Well, maybe he thought that he can't be subjected to double jeopardy. I
mean, that's the idea of a lawsuit, is that it's supposed to create this, prevent you from committing that again. Like if a company gets sued, for having ice on their sidewalk, they're going to make sure that they salt the sidewalk the next time. They're not going to leave it for the next person. It doesn't create this.
He comes out with the sound bites, just like to supporters and just rhetoric. Like, I can just touch a piece of paper and I could classify it and declassify it. So he just makes up his rules and then try to educate people and say this is the right way. This is the law.
We have to keep in mind, how many times have I said this? Everybody keeps trying to think about it like he's a regular person. He's not. He's a criminal, and he has a criminal mind. And all the things you guys are saying, criminals do this routinely. Criminals lie. Criminals do the exact same thing after the judges told them, if you do it again, you're going to jail. They come in on supervised release violations. They sell dope while they're on bond. That's what this guy is. He's a criminal. And it's just difficult, particularly on the national media. You listen to these guys talking, and they just don't recognize that fact, I guess, because they say, God damn, the guy was the president of the United States. So what? He's a criminal. He's been a criminal his whole life.
So, Steve, you mentioned earlier that you didn't think it's going to be possible for the use of the public official excuse to try to kick this from state up to federal. That's something that Mark Meadows, former chief of staff, is trying to do. Interestingly, he's been indicted in the Georgia case, but not in the federal cases.
Well, so the unindicted co-conspirators in the federal case, I took it, and I think we discussed this here, I took that as being Smith's way of putting pressure on these guys. Mm-hmm. Either you're going to you want to sit next to him, or you want to come in and talk to us. That's why I shouldn't say surprised, because Giuliani, nothing he does surprises me anymore. But if he's thinking of doing something like that, you don't make the statements he's been making since the Georgia indictment, because it'll be used against him in cross-examination. I think that a guy like Meadows, Meadows absolutely deserved to be indicted in Georgia because of his own butting into the thing. And quite frankly, Lindsey Graham's lucky he wasn't indicted. Absolutely. It's only because he's a senator, because he had as much business calling the Georgia Secretary of State's office as I have calling the White House. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Absolutely.
So I think Meadows, he's probably a weenie. I wouldn't be surprised if he cooperates. Didn't he allow some of his stuff to be submitted to somebody, right? And from what I understand, I read an interesting article that talked about him. He's just your typical brown-nosing politician trying to get as high up as he can. But once he's confronted with the notion of going to jail, most of these people are weenies. I've said this 1,000 times. They're not tough guys.
So Giuliani seems to be telegraphing to anybody who will listen that Trump isn't exactly good about paying his bills. Right. That he was going to be paying attorney fees. And I think, Allan, you got video about this.
Several of the attorneys who represented Donald Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election were never paid for their work.
What?
He doesn't pay anybody.
I mean, seriously, did they not know this going in?
They're just so excited to be with him.
Are they like now going, oh my God, you mean he?
What? He doesn't pay?
What do you, for the lawyers, I'm curious, what motivates people knowing they're probably going to get stiffed? What motivates them to represent somebody?
I would think some fleeting thought of fame and fortune. I have no idea. I don't know why anybody would attack themselves.
I can tell you exactly what it is. It's that thought of fame and fortune. Most lawyers, Lengel, you were in the business of interviewing people. Most people want to see their stuff in the newspaper and their face on TV. Look at Dana Nessel. Have you ever seen anybody that wants to be on TV more than her? Are you kidding me?
Now.
No, but most these lawyers are doing it so they get their name in the newspaper, get their their face, that means in Yiddish, their face on television, and then if they get screwed by him, at least they'll be out there. Maybe they'll pick up a few other dollars from some other sucker down in wherever their states are.
Yeah, but
no, you're absolutely correct. I mean, how could they believe he was going to pay? This is a man, Trump, who doesn't even believe war heroes are heroes because they were captured. So you honestly think a person like this, you're going to represent and work for him, and if you do not say, hey, okay, the election was stolen and proven and overturned, you think he's going to pay you? Because he's going to say you failed at your job.
Yeah, Melania Haberman had a great article on this or discussion on CNN because she said that Rudy is at zero. He has no money. He wanted $20,000 a day from Trump, who he loves, and apparently Trump's a good friend of his who won't pay a fucking dime for the guy. My question is, Rudy's selling his apartment in New York for $6.5 million. The question is Trump's rejection of him and and Giuliani's efforts to get some money from Trump to save him from bankruptcy, when he doesn't get that, isn't there a motive for Giuliani to say fuck you and turn and roll a little bit for the government? I mean,
Allan, do you think he didn't get enough royalties from Borat 2? And I think you've got a clip of that too.
What is the most popular thing in the world?
Music.
No.
Tell me.
Ice cream.
Okay.
Everyone has it. And what is the problem with ice cream?
I have no idea.
It drips.
Okay.
So my idea is what?
To make a drip-proof ice cream.
No. Oh, that's a fucking brilliant idea, this. All right, whatever. You ain't going to come out with that, though.
No, I promise you I won't.
Well, my idea is to come out with just like these ice cream gloves that make the ice cream not go on your hands and make it all well sticky, and also keep your hands warm.
Okay.
When you is eating the ice cream.
Okay.
Is you win or is you win?
Okay. Well, it sounds like a good idea, and I hope you make a lot of money. Good luck, folks. It's been nice seeing you. You take care of yourself.
That, of course, that's Baron Cohen, who is Ali G, also formerly Borat, and of course in the sequel, that's where we had Giuliani. But this may be one of the reasons why Trump has decided not to be in the debate next week. Because if he's having a difficult time with Ali G, you got to wonder how he's going to handle the rest of the GOP field, and certainly the kinds of questions that are going to be levied against him. How do you think his absence in the debate is going to play out?
Fish, go ahead.
I think he has a plan. I read something somewhere that the person said the same thing I kind of think. I think he's going to have a rally or something like that. He's going to do something at the same time as the debate, and he'll get 8 zillion people to come to it. And because of the way the press is, they'll probably cover that as much as they cover the debate. I mean, Fox News has to have the debate on, right? Because they're the ones doing it. But I'll bet you a lot of the other things, they'll be following, what's going on with Trump? He'll do something to overshadow that debate. That's my prediction. I don't know what.
I think he's so far ahead. It was like we were talking before the show about Mike Duggan with Anthony Adams. I mean, Anthony Adams was almost invisible in this last campaign. And Duggan was like, why should I give him anything? And I think Trump is so far ahead of these guys, and they're just going to look like clowns trying to knock. I mean, Chris Christie's going to be punching away at Trump and Biden. And DeSantis, the strategy that we see one of the PACs posted said, defend Trump during the, go up against Christie, defend. I mean, Christie's not a threat. I mean, at this point, Christie's, probably operating at 3, 4, 5%. DeSantis needs to go after Trump. And Trump's not going to be there. So, I think it's smart when you're that far ahead. You have less to gain by being there.
You got everything to lose.
Yeah, right. I agree. He has nothing he has nothing to gain. They have something to gain. He does not. That's a comparison as if they're like no-name dolls on the shelf at the dollar store trying to go up against Barbie right now. I mean, really. So it's no benefit for him to attend, and it would just benefit them.
Right.
Yeah, I noticed those Oppenheimer dolls aren't really moving that fast. I got mine before it became cool. So you got that. Well, one glaring absence in all of this actually seems to be Donald Trump's family. We don't really see, and I gotta confess, I actually thought that one of the people to be indicted in Georgia would have been Donald Trump Jr. But that didn't happen, so I lost that bingo match. But we don't really hear too much from him or from Eric. Tiffany, we never hear from, but also Ivanka, Jared, the son-in-law, and Melania, who apparently has now come out and said, in her be best voice, that this is my husband's thing. It's not really my thing, and I want 100% privacy. I don't even want anyone to ask me about this. It looks like people are abandoning ship.
Yeah, she won't be singing the song "Standing by Her Man." Will not be doing that. It's the sentiment, like, Dad, yeah, I'm with you to the end. This is the end, okay?
I'd be curious with that marriage where that's at. I mean, I could see it where it's like, hey, Melania, I'll meet you for dinner at the Mar-a-Lago on such and such a date. And she'll be like, all right, I'll see you then. I can't imagine there's much cohesiveness to that.
It's a transactional marriage. It's convenient for both of them.
Absolutely.
I'm glad that they didn't charge any other members of the family, including either of his sons. Not because I like them or think that they're good guys, but I think you want to focus in on just exactly the way both of them did, the way Smith did it and the way Willis did it. I think you pick the people who really, not just the ones who were talking shit, but the ones who were in a position to do stuff. And that's who's indicted in the Georgia case, in my opinion, at least. I never heard of some of those people. I presume you guys never did either until we read about them. But when you read about what the charge is against them, they were in a position to do something. They did phony elector stuff and whatever else it was. Those are the people you charge. I don't think you just charge a big mouth asshole like his son just because he's a big mouth asshole.
I still remember walking to work, walking past Grand Circus Park where there was a barbecue place the day before the 2016 election, and Don Jr. was giving a speech to a bunch of businessmen and talking about how his father is wealthy, he doesn't need this, but he loves his country. And then I remember the next day, Don Jr. being on the morning show saying, I never underestimate my father. And I mean, there's something to be said about that. But I think he's at his match finally. I think he's got so many arrows in his back, he's just gonna fall. He's like a wounded animal, I think. But
you got to keep shooting them. Then you got to keep getting those arrows.
But I think it is interesting, though, that, I mean, it seems as though from reporting over the last couple of years that Don Jr. At least had some exposure with Georgia. He was picking up the phone. So, like Steve said, I mean, it looks like there's some really strategic prosecution going on here. One of the people who was indicted in Georgia was, in fact, lawyer Cheeseborough, who wrote the memo, protege that he was of Harvard constitutional law expert Lawrence Tribe. So I got to wonder what Tribe must be thinking now about the guy who apparently misquoted and misreferenced Tribe in order to get this memo pushed forward. So little bit of Schadenfreude going on there. Well, closer to home, we've got a situation in St. Joseph County on the west side of the state where the county officials are asking Governor Gretchen Whitmer to remove the sheriff, Mark Lillywhite, for his charges about
Lillywhite. Okay.
Great name.
That guy he didn't go to Mumford with us, I can tell you that.
Well, I did say
his name should get removed on the name alone, but go ahead.
Name.
It is from St. Joseph. So on a drunk driving crash that he had and certain misdemeanors that he was facing as a result of it. Is this something that we're going to see more often, where local governments are now going to come in and ask for state officials to then remove elected officials?
There must be another process besides. I mean, look what DeSantis did. He removed a prosecutor, second one in the state. I think it's a little bit dangerous to remove elected officials in that manner. I think.
Well, I agree. Yeah, we get into that slippery slope. I mean, there are processes in place, and I know that both the lawyers can articulate it better than I. But in some cases, if it rises to a certain level, depending on what the action is and what they've done, but DUI is very serious. However, I don't think it rises to the level of having a governor coming in and remove, and supersede whatever that process is.
I mean, there's always a recall. He's an elected official.
Yes.
But
yes. I'm not for taking all of the power away from the people. It has to be, to me, to a certain level of what the action was.
Yeah, and he should be treated like every other defendant with a DUI.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, Alan, I think at least one of those prosecutors is challenging his removal in court. I think I read that.
Okay.
Because I agree with Beverly. I mean, you really, people elect and people recall, and the citizens, you can't take the vote away from the citizens unless it's something a lot worse than a DUI. I don't know anything about the St. Joe's case other than the headline, but have they been looking to get rid of them before? Who knows? We're not there.
Yeah, not sure about that one. Well, the other, I think, state news that really kind of made me stand up and take notice is apparently the Michigan accent is an endangered species. It looks like the vowels going from long to short when it comes to A's and O's is starting to dissipate, and that Midwestern sort of folksy accent to which we're all accustomed may be going the way of the dodo. Is anybody as flummoxed as I am and looking to move? He said with a certain
I cannot detect that Michigan accent, to be honest. I mean, even when I worked in Washington, on the East Coast, people thought I was a New Yorker. So maybe that's because I'm Jewish. But they always go, "You're from New York." And I go, "No, Michigan." They go, "Oh, I thought you sound like a New Yorker." And I'm like, "Yeah."
I didn't know we had an accent, but you've heard of different phrases or terminologies like, soda versus pop, but I didn't know Michigan, we had an accent.
I agree. I was completely mystified by that column. I didn't know what they were talking about.
Alan, didn't you go to a Beatles convention and you kept talking about across the universe?
I have a friend many years ago, from Michigan. She went to New York. And she went to one of those little, convenience stores, and she said to the guy behind the counter, she goes, "Hey, where's your pop?" And he goes, "I don't know. Where's your pop?"
he died in the war. I mean, having lived growing up speaking the Queen's English in Great Britain, and then moving to New York briefly, and then Houston briefly. Coming to Michigan was interesting. I mean, one of the first things I noticed was pop, across, and then this whole idea of pluralizing everything. You're going to Myers. Oh yeah, I work at Ford's. Everything has an apostrophe S to it. So that's something quaint. So hopefully those things won't go away, because they are what makes Michigan Michigan, instead of sort of this homogenized Esperanto of a language that will have probably dominated by the coasts. Does anyone want to go ahead and give us an update on the UAW contract talks? I know usually we've been having Barb Engels on, and I know that she would be certainly very well equipped to talk about it. But what is anybody hearing about these about the negotiations? Anything?
I don't know anything.
Yeah, I haven't heard much lately. I mean, I know they were asking for a substantial raise, and part of that was based on the cost of living. They hadn't kept up with the cost of living. I know there's issues over the staffing, and we're seeing more and more robotics and stuff like that. So the UAW's got to sort of balance between getting their members what they deserve and also not overreaching to a point. I mean, when we were on strike at the Detroit News, there were, as much as the company was trying to bust the union, there were some legitimate things where they were asking to thin out some of the jobs weren't really necessary. There were, some of the printers and stuff like that they could have cut, and the unions were fighting so hard to save those, and they probably shouldn't have. They should have been fighting to get buyouts for those positions. But so I think they have to be careful about not pushing too far, but also pushing hard to get what the members deserve. I mean, when you look at the salaries that Mary Barra and Farley are getting over at Ford, I mean, it's insane. I mean, probably like 29 million with all the benefits and stuff like that. You can't take that kind of funding. When I was at the Washington Post, when we were starting to lose money, Don Graham, the CEO, whatever, or the publisher at some point, he was getting $400,000 a year, which is nothing. And then his niece took over as the publisher, and we were losing money, and she was asking to give no raises, and she was taking a $1.5 million bonus, which isn't huge, but still, you have to be sensitive to that. And these guys can't take these ridiculous salaries and then expect the workers to get paid shit.
No, I totally agree. And everybody has to remember as well is that the new leadership of the UAW, they campaign strong, and then they have to come out strong and stand on what they ran for based upon coming on the heels of all of these indictments, from the UAW to their members. So they definitely have to come out hard and say, hey, we're not going to come out here and do this business as usual and do the handshake. And they do. And I agree with everything you were just saying, Allan, especially when you look at the top tier of what they're making, of what the product is and the profit is, looking at the members, especially as we get into the technology, the EV, and all of those technologies that are coming, to make sure that the workforce is compensated fairly. However, I do agree, sometimes we got to get off the TV now with the sound bites and get back in that conference room and start making a deal. I mean, I'd hate to see things like we're going to take this on, auto show is just around the corner. This could really affect the auto show, which affects a lot of the economy here and for other states that's having auto shows that bring in big bucks. And so I definitely think the members definitely need to be compensated, but I really would like them to see them really get in that room, stop the sound bites on the local news, because I know that's how you win and get people to listen to you, and really do a good negotiation that's fair for both sides. Because at the end, if they do not, everyone loses.
Right. I think that's a great point, Beverly. I mean, we've been losing a lot of the sort of the value of the North American International Auto Show to cities like Chicago and Los Angeles, where many of the big three are even like debuting models over there instead of right here at home in Detroit. By the way, just one correction, Allan. It's Ford's, not Ford. As a Mumford High alum, you should know that. But there's also this whole idea of artificial intelligence. I mean, you see how much that is part of the negotiations with the strikes in Hollywood, among writers, among actors, and although of course people who work in the auto industry don't have to worry about royalties on streaming, but just the kind of impact this technology is going to have on the labor force must be then taken into consideration. I mean, it's almost like a deja vu all over again, that when robotics started to become more part of the assembly line process, there was, of course, then an impact on the labor force, and it seems as though this is going to be the next leap forward to that.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. I mean, the UAW. Is still a very powerful union. I mean, when you can shut down the workplace, you still have the power. I mean, during the strike, we weren't able to shut down the newspapers. I mean, they were like people were crossing the line electronically. They were getting out the paper. Although, I mean, their circulation got cut in half. I mean, the union. It's like any war; both sides lose. But it's like in Hollywood. I mean, I miss watching late night TV. I miss SNL, although it's been sometimes kind of uneven. But I don't know how long that strike can go on. It just seems self-destructive there.
See, Alan, you got to switch over to the Housewives series, okay? Just reality.
Well, Beverly, Alan's not that desperate. So this is a bit of an audible. It wasn't actually on the list, but it just reminded me when, Alan, you were talking about the newspaper strike here. In Marion, Kansas, a really fascinating situation. Small town of about 8,000. One small town newspaper run by a family, including the son who used to be a professor of journalism, I think, at the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana. Some kind of situation going on there involving a business owner and a really ugly divorce. She was upset at how some of the information got to one of the reporters. She makes a complaint, and the police department then executes a search warrant on this little newspaper and seizes computers and all kinds of other equipment. Is this not a police state incarnate?
Well,
go ahead.
It obviously was viewed as that because I think yesterday or the day before, the police decided, whoa, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't such a great idea. And at least from what I read, they brought all the stuff back and off we go. I honestly have to tell you, Saeed, I couldn't tell what prompted it. I really couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand that either. What was how are they going to search?
Keep in mind, you can't execute search warrants because you're pissed off at somebody else. You have to show to a magistrate. You have to show to a magistrate that there's some probable cause to believe a crime's being committed. And for the life of me, I from what I read, I don't watch TV, so I don't know what they're saying there. But from what I read, I couldn't figure out what exact crime was it that they claimed they were investigating.
It was identity theft.
Wait, say it again.
It was identity theft. Apparently, a restaurant owner by the name of Carrie Newell, involved in a pretty bitter divorce, claimed that a newspaper reporter had certain information of hers maybe given to her by her estranged husband, and she felt that was improperly obtained by the newspaper. She was able to go ahead and persuade a magistrate and a sheriff. I have a feeling in a town of 8,000, some of these people wear multiple hats, and it seems as though the kind of power structure is akin to Hazard County, Georgia, with Boss Hogg. You remember that show. So that seems to be the grounds, Steve. It was that identity theft.
Well, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, and somehow, maybe because of the sheriff's actions or something, the paper had made a statement, was looking into it, and then I think they said the sheriff, overreaching, pulled the plug and said, "Hey, we're going to go in there and raid this place."
Yeah, interestingly, they didn't run the story. What happened was Newell was apparently involved in a DUI, and the conflict was that her husband and she, in the middle of a divorce, it had to do with who was going to get the restaurant. He was making the argument that she can't hold the restaurant or be even a co-owner because with a DUI in the state of Kansas, she's not eligible to go ahead and have a liquor license. So that's why, like I said, more bitter than anything Elizabeth Taylor or Larry King went through in their divorces.
Many divorces.
Many divorces. You know what's amazing, and you would have thought that the odds would have actually caused this. They never married each other.
Wow. 6 degrees of separation.
So one last thing to consider, and that is what's been going on in Maui with the wildfires. I think the death toll now is somewhere around 120, and it's expected to go much higher because they still haven't been able to investigate more than, I think, 10% of the area that was involved. The blame game has already begun. In fact, the head of the local emergency management association resigned over a controversy that he didn't sound the alarms or the siren. His claim was that he didn't do so because those sirens have only really been used for tsunamis. And in fact, if they would have gone off, it would have caused people to move inland, which is ironically where the fires were. So it was a judgment call, but there was, I suppose, someone that needed to be blamed. My question, though, is this. The headquarters of the United States Pacific Fleet is 2 islands away in Honolulu. Why is the Navy not involved in providing and bringing more aid and relief to the islands? So I don't know. Just a question I had.
Could be if you're requested. Did the governor request them to do so? You know, I don't know who asked for the assistance. It may have been so sudden and quick. God only knows. Because it would. I mean, it's devastating. And it was fucking fast. And it's Armageddon. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, moving at 1 mile per minute, which is 60 miles an hour for you and me, I mean, and I was driving down the highway yesterday, and I was just then calculating how fast this fire must have been moving. I mean, it was just really scary.
Crazy.
And consider that. Well, let's go to a commercial break right now.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabri. We are living through unprecedented times. As a result, the Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund was created. This fund, administered by the state of Michigan, is designed to help homeowners cope with pandemic-related hardships, such as delinquent property taxes. Residents may apply for up to $25,000 to help cover 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years. Previous year's taxes must be paid in full or in a payment agreement with the Treasurer's office. Eligible homeowners must have a qualified financial hardship that occurred on or after January 21st, 2020. You must currently own and occupy your home as your primary residence and must have owned it since January 21st, 2020. To see if you qualify, please visit waynemetro.org, call 313-388-9799, or email taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Okay, and now we go to
downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
That's right. And I have a feeling there is no dearth of schmucks that we can nominate. Point. Beverly, who's your schmuck of the week?
My schmuck of the week is, and this might surprise you men, but it's going to be Sam A. And you want to know who he is? He's the husband of Britney Spears.
Yeah.
He's a schmuck. You know, how dare you? A deal is a deal. All is fair in love and war. Just because you signed a prenup that says you get nothing, now you want to try to, blackmail her for some money, and unless you come out with an all-tell-all. I mean, get out of here. She needs to kick him out along with the tanning lotion. He's the schmuck of the week.
The A could be for many things. Some of them are very pejorative, but it is for Asghari.
Yeah, Team Britney. Team Britney.
Yes. That is definitely a relationship that is toxic, shall we say, Beverly? So, yeah.
Yes.
That's very funny.
Okay. Steve, who's your schmuck?
Me?
Yep.
My schmuck of the week, and I agree with you, man, oh man, were there candidates this week. Mine is Jenna Ellis, the lawyer who is one of the defendants down in Georgia. And I rarely do this, but I wrote a couple things down because I wanted to be accurate. Her statement after being indicted was that this indictment, quote, criminalizes the practice of law, end quote, which is fascinating if she was actually a real fancy lawyer. Here's her background. She was homeschooled. She went to law school at a place I never heard of, and she became a deputy district attorney in a place called Weld County, Colorado. And what she did there, as she was a deputy district attorney, she worked on misdemeanors relating to traffic. And then every now and then she'd get an A and B case or maybe a shoplifting case. And to tell you what a fabulous lawyer she was, even there in the great Weld County, she was fired after being on the job for 6 months. That is her legal background. And she is telling the rest of the world that they're criminalizing the practice of law, which she obviously doesn't have a clue as to what the practice of law is all about. So, Jenna, I hope you get convicted. I wouldn't mind you getting 90 days or so sitting in the can, since you've never really probably ever been anywhere where there's real criminal courts. And she is my schmuck of the week, Jenna Ellis.
You know, Steve, I just looked up Colorado parking meter laws are more extensive than the famous Jewish sports legend pamphlet in Airplane. So, you know, I think we need to give her a little bit of latitude. Yeah, I think it's two-sided. Yeah. So, all right, Joel.
Okay, I'll give you mine. Is after I listened to Lindsey Graham and the other yesterday, and the argument that the Republicans are making that the criminality of Trump should be left to the electorate is an absurd argument. We don't decide guilt or innocence by voting in the electorate. We don't have general elections for that. We have juries for that. And the argument that the electorate is somehow better situated to decide what to do with Trump is bothersome and contrary to the law. This is he's charged with significant crimes. The electorate doesn't have anything to do with these other than his interference. And those who are purporting and making the argument that, well, this is really a decision that the voters should make, that's bullshit. This is a decision judges should make and juries should make, not the electorate. And so that argument is bogus and it's troublesome. So they're my schmucks of the week.
Yeah, that was mine. I'll say Rudy Giuliani just because he's a total schmuck in this whole thing. But I'll elaborate a little, since mine was also Lindsey Graham, is that he is saying, it should be left up to the voters instead of the liberal jurisdictions trying to put the man in jail. And the interesting irony is that it was left up to the voters in 2020 who decided not to vote Trump in. And then he has not honored that aspect of it. And that's why he's in trouble this time. So it's kind of ironic that they want to leave it up to the voters. But if the voters actually decide contrary to Trump, then they should not leave it up to the voters.
Well, one other thing about that, they say they want to leave it up to the voters. Who do they think the citizens on a citizens grand jury are? They're regular citizens.
Exactly.
They happen to be voters who were presented with the evidence and they issued indictments. Everybody talks about Smith and Fannie Willis, but if the grand jurors don't believe the case is worth crap, then they won't issue an indictment. So there's your voters. Jurors are voters.
Right. And just to follow up on this, Schmuck, the people that on the right who are releasing the names and the addresses of the grand jurors,
that's terrible.
Investigated, put in jail. This is fascism, and this is fascism.
Yes.
And it's out there. It's been out there for years, but this is fucking fascism, pure and simple. And they have to be looked at, and they have to be charged and put away. That is terrifying.
They're mimses. They are mimses.
Mumsers.
Sorry.
Mumsers. If we're going to start tossing Yiddish around, let's at least pronounce it properly.
Yes, sir. Well, see, I mean, this is the sad thing. I mean, I'm thinking about, people like Vincent the Chin and John Gotti and all of these people. Had they had better representation, they could have gone ahead before they were getting indicted. They could have announced that they were running for public office. And that way they could go ahead and say, hey, you can't be doing this to us. You're messing with our election candidacy.
Right.
But, they should have contacted both of you, Joel and Steve. Okay. Well,
that would have been my point.
I've got a couple of schmucks here. First of all, it's the British Museum and Peter Higgs. Peter was the curator of Greek collections and sculpture until a couple of weeks ago when he was fired. He was alleged to have stolen a bunch of artifacts of significant worth and value, which some of them mysteriously came up for sale on eBay for under £100, or about $125 to you and me. Some of these things, of course, are priceless. That, of course, is problematic enough and makes Peter Higgs a schmuck. But it's pretty schmucky of the British Museum to be this indignant, because it's literally the largest repository of stolen items in the world. So to go ahead and say that they're getting him for fencing when they've got a pretty big fence around themselves, that's problematic. But staying on the Angel Isle, my other two schmucks are the heir apparent to the British throne, Prince William, and British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, neither of whom is going to be traveling to Sydney, Australia to attend Sunday's World Cup final for women's soccer or football. England has made the final against Spain, having defeated Australia, Spain defeating Sweden. William is literally the chairman of the Football Association. And yet he's saying, no, I don't want the carbon footprint to be so big to go down there and root the Lionesses on. Come on. These guys just waste carbon all day long. And he is not going. And Rishi Sunak, shame on you as well for not showing up for really what's going to be an amazing final and the prospects that England is. So Rishi,
when is that? When is that?
That's Sunday. And for those of you who are interested in watching it here in the United States, it'll be on at 6 a.m. on Sunday. So definitely catch, which means it's a 10 p.m. match in Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
Kind of a late start for them there, but you know, the Australians, I guess, are used to having late nights anyways. So
in the immortal words of Greg Norman when he was winning his golf thing, and all the Australians were down celebrating and getting drunk, and one of the media people says, Jesus, Greg, is this what you guys do? He says, hey, we're the descendants of criminals. What do you expect?
This of course was before he blew that 6-stroke lead at the Masters, where Nick Faldo then beat him by 6 strokes. So anyways, thank you so much for being on a great episode. Thank you for really a great discussion, especially about Georgia. Steve, I know, like I said, I've been waiting for this indictment to come down. Here you just belch out all of your wisdom on it. So thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Allan. And with the last word, as always,
drive home safely.
Have a great week.